Illinois, Matthew Malcolm with American Vineyard Magazine, reporting to you here today from Allied Grape Growers annual meeting. It's always a great time meeting with fellow wine grape growers here with Jeff Bitter. He's the president of the organization. This was your 74th annual meeting, right?
That's right. 74, 75 is a big year next year. So
yeah. So unfortunately, not a lot of great news for the wine industry, but nobody was throwing tomatoes at you today. So that's a good sign, right?
Yeah, it was. I think everybody knows where we're at in the cycle. And so there was no surprises. And, I like to tell it how it is and be honest and truthful about where we're at and where we're going. And
we do appreciate that you don't sugarcoat it, you just say it how it is. And you shared some interesting stats today. And my main question to you today is, how much longer is our wine industry going to be in the tanks? Like, it's been pretty tough, and you had some facts as far as, like, how much are we producing to get down, to size down to adequate demand, so that we don't have the surplus that we're dealing with.
Yeah, so the numbers I showed today were essentially based on 2024 shipments and what we're seeing as pull through in the market. And essentially that amounts to about what would be the equivalent of about 3.4 million tons crushed, okay? So historically we had 4 million ton crushes. And then in more recent years, we've had 3.6 million ton crushes on average. Part of that was driven by the fact that wineries didn't buy all of the grapes that were available. It was a self-regulating market, and there just wasn't need. But the reality is the pull-through today, if you look at sales, is about 3.4 million. Last year, we had a 2.9, let's call it, 2.8, 2.9 million ton crush of wine grapes. So we made some ground on chewing away at that inventory because we had a smaller crush than what the pull-through is. But we still have a ways to go to reduce that inventory. We still have a surplus of inventory from years past, particularly from the time when the pandemic kind of ended and we were oversupplying ourselves with regard to demand. So going forward, yeah, that number, if we don't lose any further shipments, is about 3.4 million.
Yeah, it's kind of tough to really gauge what it would have been if growers had delivered all of their fruit, the last few years. So it's really hard to determine, I think, today, what would we be at, this year? Where are we expecting to be? Also, not understanding exactly where we're at acreage-wise. Where do you think we're at acreage-wise in California, and where should we be? Because you've been beating the drum over the years that we need to remove more acreage. And Chris Bitter, complimented that as far as a green,
Yeah, so, last year, the 2024 crop, we were sitting at about 550,000 bearing acres. I've called for the reduction of 50,000 acres. We need to get that closer to 500,000 overall. If we were at 500,000 acres today with a normal crop, we would produce that 3.4 million tons of wine grapes that the market would pull through naturally. We're not at that 500,000 acres today, and we're also sitting on inventory from the past. So the combination of those two things is what's creating the difficulty in the market today. If we were to have a very short crush this year in 2025, because of low yields and or grapes not being purchased and crushed, then we could chew away at that surplus we have. And the sooner we chew away at that and get that into balance, and then we simultaneously perhaps kind of balance our acreage with what the longer term need is, we could whip back into shape fairly quickly. I don't see a situation today where we're going to go too far too fast. There's been a lot of talk about that. I'm not necessarily worried about that. I wish I was. Yeah. But the reality is I think we've got a couple of years. This year for sure is going to be difficult. I think we all know that. We acknowledge that. The question is, how difficult is this year and how will that impact next year? Right. If this year looks like last year, then I think we're in for another difficult year in 2026. If this year is worse than last year, then maybe 2026 we start to see some rebound, a little bit more of a healthy market. But just considering the trends and the motion of things, I'm saying that we're probably looking at 27, 28 before we get back to kind of a healthy marketplace where we're producing what we need, it's being pulled through, prices are sustainable. I don't see that happening this year for sure, and maybe not even next year.
Yeah, so we can unfortunately anticipate that some of our grapes will go unharvested again this year and maybe even next year, and that's really sad.
It is.
But that's the way economics works, I guess, sometimes. But looking at the crop so far this year, have you in talking to your growers, what are we seeing? Are we seeing a decent sized crop?
It depends on the region. We're seeing decent sized crop in the coastal areas. A rebound from last year in some cases, where maybe they didn't. I mean, basically nobody in the state last year had a good crop. It was pretty light statewide, but in the coast we're seeing a decent rebound, some good cluster counts and bunch development and things looking good as we progress. We've had about as perfect of a spring as you can have for grape growing. In the interior, I would say we're probably on the light side on whites, and as you go south, we're probably even on the light side on reds. So average minus, I would call the crop in the interior, and probably closer to average in the coast. So overall, again, based on the acreage we have in the ground, the crop size, it's unlikely that all the grapes produced will be crushed this year.
But at least it sounds like we'll get a good quality crop.
Absolutely. I mean, based on the weather and the growing season so far, you couldn't ask for more. It looks like it's going to be a really outstanding vintage.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. Appreciate being real with everybody, and hopefully we can get through the next couple of years and things will get better. Learn more about these things in American Vineyard Magazine. I'm Matthew Malcolm, CaliforniaAgNet.com.